I'm sure like it's all over the news right now, but in Quebec, in the provincial government there, they're saying how they're going to bring in bring in something like a health tax for the unjabbed, for people who haven't like gone the shot yet. Um, so yeah, and like it's getting a lot of attention, countrywide in Canada. So I'm gonna pull up an article right now which helps explain it all. So, so this is an article from True North that says Quebec makes jab mandatory under threat of significant fees. Quebec is the first province in Canada and only the second government in the Western world to make jabs mandatory for adults under threat of financial penalties. Quebec Premier François Legault announced Tuesday that unjabbed Quebecers would be charged a fee for refusing the COVID-19 jab. The jab is the key to fight the virus, said Legault. This is why we're looking for a health contribution for adults that refuse to be jabbed for non-medical reasons. Those who refuse to receive their first dose in the coming weeks will have to pay a health contribution. So this, so you note this word here, health contribution. So this is just another way of saying tax contribution. So yeah, so contribution, that's another way of saying tax. So as a lot of these politicians know that people people don't like it when, yeah, like these politicians, they know people hate paying taxes and all that. So when it comes to money and all that, they'll say like they'll use words like contribution, or what else, yeah, like they'll use like different words to describe like, or they'll use the word like fee or charge. So yeah, like a health contribution, that's another way of saying a health tax or tax. As these politicians, they know people hate having to pay taxes. So in order to like make people like pay their taxes and all that, they have to use words like contribution and all that. So it will have like people thinking that it's not a tax that they're paying for, but for something that's beneficial. So, and here's a video of him. I think, so it says Quebec announced the healthcare charge for unjabbed people. What happens if you don't pay? Okay, so this is a video. I'm gonna play it right now.
The vaccine is the key to fight the virus. This is why we're looking for an health contribution for adults who refuse to be vaccinated for non-medical reasons. Those who refuse to receive their first dose in the coming weeks will have to pay a new health contribution. I know the situation is tough, but we can get through this together. We need to focus our efforts on two things: getting the first, second, and third doses of vaccine, and reducing our contacts, especially with older people. So I'm counting on you all. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the end of the video, And yeah, he was basically just saying how um yeah, like how the province is gonna charge like a like a fee, or in other words a tax for people who don't get who don't get the job. So um yes, that's the end of that video. Then it says Legault says the amount of the fee has not yet been determined, but that it should be significant enough to convince the unjabbed to get the shots. He said that $50 or $100 is not enough. When asked about the legal and ethical challenges of the rollout, Legault admitted the policy was a big deal and that everybody's trying to find a solution. Right now, these people put a very important burden on our healthcare network, and I think it's normal that the majority of the population is asking that there be a consequence, he said. It's a question of fairness for the 90% of the population who made some sacrifices. I think we owe them this kind of measure. 90% of eligible Quebecers have received at least one shot, with 82% fully jabbed. Legault added that he would be looking at expanding jab passports in Quebec. Last week, Quebec became the first Canadian province to announce that passports would require a third dose. Quebec also becomes only the second government in the Western world to make jabs compulsory for all adults. Austria committed to the measure for everyone 14 years and older, on threat of fines every 3 months equaling more than $4,000 per adult. The policy is set to begin February. Italy brought in fines in January for those 15 older who have not been jabbed, while Greece will be following suit in February. Legault announced Quebec's mandatory jab policy less than 24 hours after Quebec's public health director, Horacio Arruda, resigned, citing an erosion of public support over government pandemic restrictions. So, that last part there, where the former public health director resigned. So he's saying it's because of an erosion of public support over government pandemic restrictions. So yeah, that's just another way of saying how nobody supports the government's like these policies or mandates the government is pushing. So yeah, that's just another way of saying how nobody supports it. So like most of the people are against it, and yeah, and because of that, like one of the health director of Quebec had to resign because nobody like supported the government's position on imposing these like mandates. So and it says the announcement also comes days after the Trudeau government health minister Jean-Yves Duclos said provinces should have a conversation with the feds about forcing Canadians to get COVID shots. People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier, who marched with thousands in Montreal on Saturday against Quebec's lockdowns, told True North that mandatory jabs was already the case in Canada and that Legault is scapegoating. Government started by imposing a jab passport and denying access to certain public areas for unjabbed people, Bernier said. Now Quebec is willing to go much further and impose what is essentially a costly fine to peaceful citizens who refuse a health intervention. And if these citizens refuse to pay it at the end of the day, there are always policemen with guns who will enforce the rule. We are quickly becoming a police state, a fascist state where the government can decide to abrogate our fundamental rights and freedoms based on a mass hysteria that they've created, Bernier added. They are scapegoating a minority of the population as the cause of all of society's problems, and they are willing to persecute them. It's all extremely disturbing. Well, yeah, like he's right in what he's saying there. Um, yeah, it's not only like the government in Quebec that's doing it, but like even the federal level, they're doing that as well. And yeah, like it's like now they're just going straight to blaming the unjabbed people for the failure of government's like response and all that. So because the government they haven't been able to, because the government they've caused a lot of people to, I guess, to not support these mandates and all that. Now it's like the government they're like doubling down now as they're now just blaming the unjabbed people for like the for like the hospitals being overwhelmed and all that. And so, and yeah, and Trudeau, he apparently like was on a French TV show saying how unjabbed, how people who haven't been jabbed, they're racist or misogynist and all that, like all these slanders and libel stuff that he called them. So yeah, so it seems like now like the new tactic is to just go after the unjabbed people and blame them for all the new restrictions and all that. So, okay, so that's the end of this article here. So now, okay, there's another article over here. I'm gonna pull up. So this one says Civil Liberties Group condemns tax compelling Quebecers to get COVID shots. Now it says the Canadian Civil Liberties Association (CCLA) has denounced the Quebec government for its plan to financially punish people who have not gotten COVID shots. Premier Legault is taking the unprecedented step of taxing Canadians based on their personal medical choices, said CCLA lawyer and spokesperson Cara Zwiebel in a statement on Tuesday. He's proposing a direct penalty for being unjabbed, compelling individuals to undergo medical treatment. Zwiebel said that allowing the Quebec government to put fines on people who disagree with its recommended medical treatment is a deeply troubling proposition. To justify this tax, she said Quebec needs to provide clear and compelling evidence and demonstrate that there were no other reasonable alternatives. Fleibel added that the tax was an equity issue. Despite Canada having universal public health care, she said the country does not fine people who make poor diet and exercise choices, nor those who participate in high risk occupations and recreational activities. Some unjabbed people face barriers to accessing healthcare, Zwiebel argued, and many of them do not trust the healthcare system because of past negative experiences. Okay, so the healthcare system in Canada is completely socialized, meaning it's government funded. So like even before like 2020, when all the lockdowns happened, people were already having trouble getting healthcare as as yeah as like the as there's no like private, there's no like competition and that with the healthcare system in Canada, as it's all like government funded. And so there's no like privatized options where people can go to get more like to get treatment sooner and all that. So yeah, like the healthcare system in Canada has already had like problems even before COVID. So now it's only gotten worse with all these like restrictions and all that. So then it says this is a divisive measure. This is a divisive measure that will end up punishing and alienating those who may be in most need of public health supports and services, she said. The government should abandon this divisive and constitutionally vulnerable proposal. Quebec Premier Francois Legault announced Tuesday that unjabbed people would be forced to pay a health fee. Premier Francois Legault said the fee has not been determined, but that it would be significant. I think right now it's a question of fairness for the 90% of the population who made some sacrifices, said Legault. I think we owe them this kind of measure. Well, I doubt anybody asked for this. Asked for like a health tax. So and yeah, and I'm sure there's and I'm sure like this, and I'm sure it's like unlawful or illegal in some way. This like health tax that Legault wants to impose on Jap Quebecers. So yeah, and I doubt like anybody asked for that. So I don't know where he's getting that idea from, where he thinks he owes people that. So, so yeah, it just shows like so yeah, it just shows how I guess like governments are just like pretty much all three levels of government in Canada are just doubling down, and now people are as I guess now that people are beginning to question these lockdowns and restrictions and all that and these mandates. Like I think the government is starting to see how a lot of how they're losing the support of a lot of Canadians. So now I think the new like now that their tactic is to just attack the unjabbed people, saying blaming them for all the new restrictions and for like the hospitals being overwhelmed and all that. So now it seems like the government now it seems like they're just going directly for the unjabbed people now. So like now it's like they're not even like hiding it anymore. They're just going out of their way to blame the unjabbed. Like even if they have to use like slander and libel and all that. So so yeah, so that's the end of the article, and yes, that's the end of the article, and we can close it now. So yeah, it just shows that I think now it seems like all three levels of government in Canada are now just going after the unjabbed people. So as I guess they're starting to notice that their plans are failing and all that. So now it's like the new tactic is to just blame the unjabbed people, calling them racist and misogynist and all that, like Trudeau did. So yeah, now it seems like that's the new tactic for the governments, since they're losing support for all these mandates and restrictions. So yeah, and Quebec seems to be like doing it the worst as um yeah like as as Quebec is only the second government to impose fines for people who are unjabbed after Austria. So yeah, that should be really concerning, and yeah, and I know people in Quebec, they value their freedom and all that. So I'm sure they're gonna push back against this, as they've been protesting a lot on the streets against these government restrictions and all that. So I'm sure, like Quebecers, they're not gonna have any of this. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about.